Right, greetings, bonjour, welcome back to the Philosophy Club here in the middle of France at a secure, wonderful location, really pretty much in the dead geographical centre of France. And each week we're looking at some of the deeper questions underlying world affairs, current events. So today is I think it's the 26th of November.
Yes.
And that's just about a month to Christmas in the Christian calendar. It's coming up to Hanukkah before that in the Jewish calendar. And sadly enough, there aren't any Muslim celebrations till February, which I think is a bit of a lacuna. We need to have a nice, in fact, in the, there should be a December 21st celebration in Shia Islam somewhere. Probably is. Okay, so look, yes, good news. We've got a little temporary ceasefire in the Israel-Palestine conflict, and although sadly that doesn't seem to have affected the West Bank, so I note that Israel is still killing Palestinians in the West Bank. The ceasefire is only applied to Gaza. I think that was a lacuna, a mistake. I would have, if I'd have been a Qatari negotiator, I would have at least tried to get it to cover the whole thing. Because obviously if Israel just goes on killing people in the West Bank, it's not exactly going to cheer the Palestinians up, is it? Every time there's a killing, it causes more anger, revenge and death threats on both sides. So I'd like to see this truce turn into a ceasefire covering the West Bank as well. Yes, and hostages should be exchanged on both sides, continuing 10 a day. And more supplies of medicine, food, water, etc. should be allowed in to Gaza, because this, like deliberately starving them to death using no food as a punishment, is actually a war crime. It's against the law. And I note that a lot of Israelis are now calling for Netanyahu to step down and resign, because they're blaming him for the security lapse that led to 1,200 people being killed on the 7th of October. Somebody should take responsibility, and a moral statesman would, of course, resign at this point. Many Israelis don't trust him. I think there's an opinion poll that showed only something like 4% of Israelis actually trust Netanyahu to tell the truth, which is a shocking and incredible statistic. But I can totally understand that. I don't trust Netanyahu at all. I've been to Israel many times, I have many friends there. I love the good Israel, and he doesn't represent that. In my opinion, he's been weaponizing this business over Hamas and Gaza deliberately. He doesn't seem to know any other way than war mentality. And he's been misusing Israeli intelligence to spread the idea that Hamas are demons and that Iran is a demonic state. This is all false as far as I can understand. Yes, of course, there are some terrible people in Hamas, but the rank and file member are probably not. We've also seen this week the son of one of the founders of Hamas making a speech protesting what Hamas have done, and he himself was tortured by them. Hamas are not like all having a teddy bear's picnic. They are pretty thuggish in their own right. And according to him, they tortured him. He was in a building run by Hamas where he could hear torture screams of other people. They torture anyone that they suspect of talking to the Israelis. Well, that's just ridiculous, in my opinion. As an interfaith guy that believes in bridge building and speaking across the barriers, I stand antithetically opposed to that interpretation of Islam. There's nothing in Islam, in my commentary on the Quran, in my studies of Islamic philosophers, that says that's Islamic. No, you respect people's religions. If somebody's Jewish or Christian, you respect them. If somebody's a pagan, a Sabaean, whatever, you respect it. And you try and find common ground. So the attitude of that kind of Hamas attitude is not Islamic. Although they can pretend, the name of Islam is being weaponized into the opposite of what it should be. We're living through a very dark time where things have become inverted. The meaning of things has become the opposite to what it ought to be. Confucius said the first job of the sage is to sort out the vocabulary get things called by their right names. And I put that quote at the front piece of my Dictionary of Philosophical Terminology. So, read that dictionary, because it gives the words in Arabic, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, Tibetan and Pali for words like truth, justice, peace, the good words of humanity that actually mean what they say. Okay, so before we start the philosophy game, I've been asked a question by one of the colleagues here about we seem to be living through a rather dark time in history. Why is hell suddenly taking over? Have all the devils come out of hell? There's a line in Shakespeare that says something to that effect. I mean, it was tough in his day too. He said, hell seems to be empty because all the demons have come here to earth. Yes, that's a very good question. I can direct people, if they're interested, to my study of comparative diabology, because this occurred to me about 3 years ago that we're having problems. Too many devils and not enough saints and angels, and not enough real gods on the scene. So I did a dictionary of all the religions of the world and what they think about the devil. Is he real? Does he exist? Is it a being? Was it a being from another world that came here to Earth? Was it like a fallen UFO adventurer? Every different religion has a different take on the devil. Some, of course, say he doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a devil. They tend to be like Unitarian Universalists, like Sir Tim Berners-Lee. Or they could be some kind of scientific physicalist like Charles Darwin. He didn't believe in a devil. And nor did Karl Marx. He thought the devil was capitalism and greed and plutocracy. And so there are many, many different perspectives on whether the devil exists, and it's a part of another question, which is what is evil and why is it allowed to be here? That's a question that many great philosophers have struggled with. Leibniz coined the phrase theodicy to describe it. It's a branch of philosophy that tries to struggle with this. If there's a good God, which most religions say, some kind of creator, how come evil is allowed? Most variants of the answer to that are some form of, it's what the Hindus call Leela. Imagine a movie where every single movie was just happy all the way through. There was no conflict, no trouble, no pain, no missed appointments. Like, it would be a bit banal and bland. It'd be like a Hallmark romance movie all the time, right? And life could be like that. I once did a thought experiment with my students. What if we could remove all suffering and all pain and all evil and all illness immediately from the planet? I wave a magic wand, right? Okay, so the trouble is it would be a bit boring. This is the argument. We need a bit of adventure. We need the bad guys to kind of keep us on our toes. And it makes for a much better storyline. So history is more exciting. It has these great struggles and strivings. That seems to be the case. I didn't invent this system. I'm just an observer, a scholar studying it. But what I have noticed is that whenever people try to eradicate all suffering and illness, things tend to get worse. Like Marxism, communism was supposed to be the answer to everything, happiness, equality and everything for everybody. And yet it led to Stalinism and Maoism and political cannibalism and the mass destruction of millions of people. Nazism was supposed to be the answer for the Germans. Everybody lived happily ever after in the 1,000-year Reich. But it led to the Holocaust, mass concentration camps, and the self-destruction of Germany, with Hitler going down in the bunker, still looking at statues of Frederick the Great and wondering what had happened. So I think I'm with Jung on this. I find Carl Jung, the psychologist, the best theorist of this. He says that the sum total of all possibilities is summed up in both what is called the consciousness of the humans, which is us, but also the unconscious, which is everything that we fear, that we repress, that we can't remember, that we just on the tip of our memory, which is all the scary things that have happened to us in life, all the things we shouldn't have done. They're all stored away in our unconscious. And it's the same in the collective unconscious, because there's the There's consciousness of humanity, which is like talking to people, having a sensible discussion. But the unconscious is the memory of everything we've all done, including all the bad stuff. So every mass murder, every German guard that did the Holocaust, every Stalinist that shot thousands of dissidents, their thoughts are all still circulating in the collective unconscious. And we can become possessed by them. Seems to me that Putin's become possessed by some scary ghosts wandering around the Kremlin pretending to be Peter the Great or Ivan the Terrible. And he's literally, he's downloaded or accessed that aspect of the collective unconscious, which made him think, I know what I'll do. I'll go and slaughter people in Ukraine and play with nuclear weapons and threaten and, I'll play soldier games, right? And so there's a risk, said Jung, that, and that's why the conscious mind isn't always aware of all the contents of everything. That's why we have a filter to screen out the negative aspects of the collective unconscious, as Henry Bergson said. It seems to me that Netanyahu has been, and some of the extremists on both sides, extreme violent Zionists, extreme violent Hamas types, they've both let in the demonic from the collective unconscious in a way that is distorting truth. In their version of the collective unconscious, all Muslims are evil, bad, all Arabs are evil, and Israel is the best thing that ever happened to history, and it must be triumphant, it must win on the battlefield and slaughter everyone else, Well, that's a demonic sort of distortion of truth. And biblical scholars like me, we've long ago realised that that's what people used to think 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, when they lived in battle times, that God was the leader of their tribe who's going to win the battles. We've gone on a bit since then. We've had an enlightenment, we've had Kant, we've had people that have taught us that ethics is not like that. It's about finding our way to peace. And Hamas people are just as guilty of this. They've distortedly downloaded from the collective unconscious their version of Islamic distortion, which is a distortion of a distortion of a distortion, because true Islam is utterly, utterly different. It's about the surrender of the ego to the absolute, and it's about non-violence and peace. That's what Muhammad intended by the concept, if you read the Quran properly or listen to my commentary. So yes, we have a problem. Now the question then becomes a psychological one. How do we give therapy to enough people so that they find their true self, which is Jung's word for the whole of us, which is a strongly secure, individuated person that is aware of their failings, aware of their strengths, is humble enough to realise we're all just human, and to keep an open mind on absolute truth, never to use violence to enforce it on somebody else. Jung was asked this question at the end of World War II when UNESCO went to him and said, how can your theories help prevent World War III? He said, well, we've got bad news, it can only be done one at a time. Because he was an individual therapist, he didn't know how we could do it collectively. In my theories, I've taken it on a bit further. I've coined this concept of transpersonal history, which is transpersonal psychohistory, in which I think we can collectively reach a state of individuation or enlightenment. And, as a Hegelian, I think history comes in these waves, and that we need to ride out the current one, which is going through. It's like a tsunami of ignorance and malevolence and darkness has swept over the planet. But I believe the solution is in a mature analysis using transpersonal history of the factors and forces and archetypes involved, and being patient and doing a lot of prayer, a lot of study, a lot of philosophy, true philosophy, and we'll see the back of them. And also that's why I did write the Tarot of the Gods, right? Because I've invoked the real gods, all 78 of them, the super squad, to come and help with the cleanup. Because, and that includes Allah, Yahweh, Indra, Vishnu, Luh, all these amazing deities, any one of which is pretty powerfully anchored in goodness, and but collectively they're a powerful bunch. So that's why I think it's worth invoking these gods to help the clean up of humanity. Oh, and the devil's got his own card, because, as Jung pointed out, you see, the story of God and the devil, which haunts Christianity, and Christ is always fighting the devil and casting it out of people, is actually, according to Jung, a sort of a schizophrenic narrative story, and that the real God includes both God and the devil. The devil is the rejected unconscious of God. God hates the devil hates God, like two brothers that are always fighting. But according to Jung, and I agree with him, they're actually both split off bits of one overall awareness, which we would call actually God, which is devil plus God. And so we have to reintegrate, according to Jung, into the overall psyche, both our propensities for, trickster activities. In most religions, there isn't a devil, there's a trickster. And there's a very useful paper by Jung on the trickster archetype in the volume called The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, which I've been reading this week. And the trickster essay, which he wrote, is very good. And that's the devil for the American Indians, for us Druids, for the vast majority of primal peoples around the planet. They don't have like a really evil devil. They have a trickster who's always causing upsets. I've just heard now that somebody has gone around the village putting the signs all upside down, like some young lads, having fun. Well, that's the trickster at work, right? It's not really evil. It's just a trickster at work. Well, that's kind of what's happening on the planet. There's the trickster energy. And Jung's essay is very good on how we can reintegrate that back. And I've always wanted to have an interfaith conference on the devil and God and how to heal the split between them in Jerusalem one day. Or London will do, if not Jerusalem. Maybe it's a bit too dodgy in Jerusalem. But that's what we've got to do, is we've got to heal this split between these different factions and forces. Anyway, let's see who we get. It'd be ironic if we get the devil card tonight. So look, let's have a pick of which gods we're going to invoke tonight, and then we'll see what they say.
Panku, this one is recent.
We don't want him again, yeah, he keeps turning up.
Dagda, that's been a month or two, I believe.
We can have Dagda, we haven't had him for a while.
Okay.
Cheers.
Is there Shiva in the card?
Of course. Bien sûr.
I hope. I can make a prayer.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Liber, right. Well, this indicates a time of peace. We have Dagda, who's the king of the gods of Ireland and the Druids. In ancient Ireland, had a very complicated mythology and religion. We call that the Druid deities. And one of the most important of them all was Dagda, which means the good god. And he represents sort of order in the system of what seems like sometimes chaotic world events. Talking of which, there's been a real tragedy this week in Dublin, which is a city I know and love well, and capital of the Republic of Ireland. And it went completely bonkers. There was a stabbing outside a children's primary school, I think the day before yesterday, and a teacher was seriously injured, a child, 6-year-old child, etc. And then a mob gathered, up to 500 people. I think the person that did the stabbing and was arrested was an immigrant into Ireland. I don't know from what background. This is what I think from social media I picked up. And so the crowd that gathered were all very anti-immigrant. and not to say racist, and were chanting things like Ireland for the Irish and Irish Lives Matter. So the whole thing was weaponised, and before you could blink, the police and the 500 mob people were throwing stuff at each other, and there were nearly 100 arrests, and it got really heavy. And of course it was all weaponised on social media. Now hang on guys, in Dublin, like my city, my other city, I mean come on. I think this is an indication of how social media has really caused trouble, especially Facebook. I bet that spread by wildfire through Facebook. And I think the Irish Prime Minister should investigate that. And if that's the case, then I think there's got to be some, I don't know what, some more controls on the way that Facebook is allowed to be used by extreme hate groups in this way. I don't quite know what Facebook can do about it. And ironically, their European headquarters is in Dublin. You know, I think something's got to be done about Facebook because I love it and I use it, but it is causing trouble. And also it might be deliberate sometimes, as we know from the Trump election victory and white racism in America, it was deliberately spread on Facebook. One solution I've got, and I'll give this away for free, Zuckerberg, if you're listening, is charge 20 quid for a lifetime membership subscription to Facebook. At the moment it's free, right? I wouldn't mind paying 20 quid to have my membership. And also, you can have my bank details, you can have my passport and my address. So, you know, I register as a user of Facebook officially. You know who I am, you know my picture and my identity. And require everybody around the world who wants to use Facebook to make that payment and to make that like a security check, pass a security check. And then if I start posting hate stuff, like kill all the immigrants, you can kick me off and you know who I am. It also removes these fake profiles. If I pretend to be someone and I'm not, you can soon track that. And that way Facebook will become a much more secure and friendly, family-friendly platform where people tell the truth, their real identity is known. You wouldn't, and by the way, you're not allowed to release all that sensitive data. You can't sell it on, as you have been doing. And that way it could be used for what it should be, which is spreading love, light and truth, so that people that want to share ideas and stuff can. Because what seems to have happened in Dublin is a total meltdown through misuse of social media and hate speech. Anyway, it's come back to order, and that's the job of Dagda. Dagda keeps things in order. He's like the top chief god, and so he's got a very big club. If you annoy Dagda, well, you wouldn't want to, because he's got this enormous club that he can, like, he's invincible. He's like Little John in the Robin Hood stories, right? Really powerful guy. But he's also got a cauldron of plenty, because he wants everybody to be happy and well fed. And every night he gives a banquet which can feed as many people as come to the tower or wherever he is hanging out. And everyone goes away happy, they're no longer hungry. And yet it's full again the next night. So the cauldron of Dagda is famous for its replenishment. And so as the king of the earth, which is what he is, now there are some misguided souls that say the devil is the king of the earth, you know, and they've got the theology all wrong. So, and some of the very early Christian demented missionaries that went to Ireland said, oh, these pagans, these druids, they're all devil worshippers, they worship Dagda, who's the devil. Well, I'm sorry, they hadn't done their theology very well. They were reading St. Augustine, who, much as I love and respect his work, he got some fundamental things wrong, did Augustine. He was very misguided when it came to the devil, and what we could call the theology of interfaith peace relations. He thought very much it's either this or that. Either you're a good Catholic or you're with the devil. Now, there's no other choice in Augustine's world. What about the Jews? Oh, they're with the devil. What about the pagans? Oh, they're with the devil. Let alone the Muslims, they hadn't turned up by the time Augustine was writing. So, now why did he say all this? Because basically he was a Manichaean pretending to be a Catholic. If you read my works carefully, Augustine was a follower of Mani. a Gnostic, pseudo-Gnostic Christian, who said, he also got wrong about the devil. He said the devil runs the entire world. The devil is the king of the earth. God came to earth as Jesus on a rescue mission to make those souls that can escape. There's no point sticking around on this planet. It's going down. All you can do is get out as soon as you can, escape to another world system, heaven, and watch this one burn up in flames. Now that's what Marnie said. I don't agree with him, because that's not my reading of Christianity. I don't read the Gospel. Christ said, "Hello gang, I've come to rescue a few of you, but the rest of you can burn in hell. It's coming." No, he didn't say that. He said, "Thy will be done on earth. Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven." You know, so I read that Christ was actually trying to save this world. But Marnie didn't read it. He actually never read the Gospels. If you study Marnie very carefully, he was a wise, wonderful, amazing guy, but just a wayward student. He was a bit of a trickster. And Augustine was a trickster, and he only converted to Catholicism because the emperor of the day made being a Manichaean illegal and punishable by death. Only at that moment did Augustine suddenly say, "Oh, I've changed. I'm a good Catholic now." Like, hang on, that's a giveaway, guys, isn't it? I mean, you know, if he'd had the integrity, he would have said, "Well, king of the earth, that's his empire. You know, I'm going to go to death with, you know, Marnie," who was also martyred, by the way. But no, he was a hypocrite. Augustine said, "Oh, I'm a good Catholic." But his thinking remained Manichaean. He gave far too much power to the devil. Whereas me and Dagda and the Druids, we don't think like that. We think the world is beautiful. Look at Ireland. It's a beautiful green land full of old castles and ivy-covered walls and ancient oak trees. And so's Europe all over. It's a magical land round here. Ancient oak trees. This was a Druid stronghold round here. And every country in the world is beautiful. I've been to Greece. I've been to 35 countries. They're all amazing. I've spent summers in Crete. I've been to Mycenae. I've been up the top of the, you know, in Athens, and worshipped in the temples there. The world is amazing. I've been to Africa and Asia, and I won't. So for me, Dagda's a good God who's the good king of the earth. He wants to save the planet from global warming. He wants to save the planet from self-destruction, from nuclear war. And the Druids, which simply means the Dharma seers, i.e. intellectuals that can see the truth, he wants us all to wake up and get working for peace and justice and truth. And he's there helping us on. He's the king of the Tuatha Dé Danann, the race of supernatural beings or gods who arrived in Ireland in ancient times on 300 ships that came across the sea. And you know, there's a whole wonderful mythology around the Dagda. Most interesting was one of his consorts, he had a few consorts, was called the Morrigan, who was the war goddess. She's the queen of battles. And you don't want to take on the Morrigan. She's like the most fearsome mother-in-law from hell that you've ever thought of, right? But he managed to tame her and tickle her and turned him into a consort who gave him very good intelligence on what the enemy were doing. So, and that's why he was able to like tame the other gods who'd been on Ireland before him, sort of demonic type things, which is a bit like Padmasambhava taming the demons of the Bons when he went to Tibet bringing Buddhism. So, so to sum up, the King of the Earth in the Tower of the Gods is a friendly but strong and immensely helpful deity. His feasting hall is full with a magic cauldron that can satisfy any hunger. But he's not merely an outer bravado kind of macho god. Rather, his strength is tempered with his druidical arts, and he uses intelligence above all. So that's how we're going to win the peace. You see, nowadays Dagda's working for peace in Ireland and Europe, the Middle East, everywhere. And that's up to us to use our, you know, I was in Tara, we were doing prayers as Druids for peace, and we helped get the Good Friday Agreement between Catholics and Protestants, who are just newcomers according to the Druids. So we have to make deep peace at the very heart of history. And that, I think, is what Dagdas come into our cards today to say. Alors, en français, c'est très compliqué, je ne peux pas le dire exactement, mais j'ai expliqué qu'on doit une réunion entre les dieux et les diables, et que c'est possible dans une métaphysique plus sophistiquée qu'Augustine. Et Pelagius, il était un bon druide, il était un druide chrétien comme moi, mais il a opposé Augustine, parce que cet homme était, alors il était un bon penseur, mais il était un peu trop naïf pour la réalité. Et je préfère Jung, qui est plus compliqué, il est plus sage, parce qu'il a travaillé avec beaucoup de gens psychotiques qui pensent que le diable est dans leur conscience, comme beaucoup de psychotiques aujourd'hui. Il a trouvé le moyen de faire la thérapie avec ces gens, c'est pour créer un espace pour eux de trouver qu'actuellement, c'est moi, le voix du diable. C'est moi, le voix de l'ange. C'est mon projection. C'est dans mon âme, toutes ces images. Et si on a le temps et l'espace, on peut guérir les gens comme ça. Il a trouvé. Et je trouve que ce monde aussi, on peut le guérir. Mais, alors, est-ce qu'il y a du temps? Oui, j'espère. Parce que le temps et l'espace arrivent du source. Et, alors, de Dieu. Okay, the second card we have is water. So we've had an earth card, and now we have a water card, which is jolly nice too. And in fact, it's very appropriate because what we've had now is lots of rain. Water's falling out of the sky and has done for like days and weeks. And so we have the Ace of Water, which seems quite appropriate. And this is a wonderful god called Liber, which is the root source of our word liberty and liberation. And liberal, it means freedom. Liber was an ancient Roman god. Liber meant the free one. He was called Liber Pater, the free father. And he was an ancient Latin god of freedom, viticulture and wine, fertility and joy. So here in the village we just had a wonderful little festival for the Nouveau Beaujolais wine in the local bar, and everyone was very happy drinking this beautiful fresh red wine. That's a celebration for Liber. He was the patron deity of the poor of Rome, the plebeians, and he was a part of their Aventine triad, so they had a particular hill in Rome for the plebeians to worship Liber. His big festival is Liberalia, which is March the 17th. And he became, therefore, associated with freedom of speech and also the rights of coming of age. When you became a citizen, you get honoured because Liber is now your patron. He was identified with Dionysus, who was the equivalent in Greece, or Bacchus. And he had some of the similar types of symbolic meanings. So the picture shows him in a vineyard. He was often semi-clad. He quite liked to frolic around the vineyard with not a lot on. And so if you worship Liber on this day, March 17th, what you would do is go to the vineyards, have some beautiful fresh wine, and then find a consort to play and, cuddle with. That was all accepted. That's life. And in fact, the term Liebe in German means love.